Hello, all, and welcome to this week's episode of the World Discord podcast. I'm still Brian Endless. Who's the other guy?
No idea. No, I'm Joel Ostrow. Welcome from Nashville.
Yes, we can tell it's a hotel behind your head this
It
time. It's
is.
the wallpaper is very distinctive.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they upgraded.
Indeed.
I think they
Yeah,
upgraded since your last visit.
probably.
Today, we are back with a wonderful guest talking about Ukraine. We've talked about the subject a couple times. It has very much been in the news lately, particularly from the U.S. side. I would like to confirm, contrary to some things you may have heard on television, that Russia did, in fact, invade Ukraine in 2022. The opposite was not true. Russia is the clear aggressor here. And before that, in 2014, Russia had invaded Crimea, which was also Ukrainian territory that had a rented Russian base in it. And Russia is now in control of Crimea and parts of eastern Ukraine. So the situation has been problematic for over 10 years now, 11 years now. There have been a lot of deaths on both sides. We hear about the fighting. We also hear about the U.S. and our involvement through assisting and arming the Ukrainian people, and it looks like that may change. And our European allies have been doing the same, and it looks like they might be ramping up assistance. Our guest today, though, is in Ukraine, so we'll get a very particular, different perspective than you've probably heard, and I'll ask Joel to introduce her.
Thanks, Brian. We are fortunate today to be joined by Khrystyna. I met Khrystyna last year. She was a Model UN student with the Ukrainian delegation, led by a professor and close friend of mine, Khrystyna Dmytryshyn of Ukrainian Catholic University. Khrystyna is now a master's student at the Kiev University, is it? School of Economics?
Yes, that's Kyiv School of Economics.
And also a program manager at the Ukrainian Institute, which works on cultural diplomacy. So we'll have a little bit of a different perspective, perhaps, than sometimes on our podcast. But I've been really excited for this conversation.
Okay, if
Christina,
I can start for 1 second, Joel, I need to correct you before we go into this too deep, because in case people don't know, Joel studied Russia and not Ukraine, and thus
correct.
he says Kiev, which is the old pronunciation, versus Kyiv, which I believe is the more correct Ukrainian pronunciation.
You're absolutely right, but I figure most of our audience wouldn't know that, so
We're
so
educating
that's why I
here.
went
We're
that way.
trying to educate people.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Joel, go ahead.
Khrystyna, before I ask a question, could you maybe? It's just funny because maybe every other week on the radio, I'm asked to give an update on the situation in Ukraine, but I'm not in Ukraine, and you are. Can you give us a little update on just the situation around the war as you experience it, and have you detected a sort of a change in circumstances just around the fighting, I guess?
First of all, thank you so much for inviting me to participate here. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I'm just grateful for this opportunity to speak up. Here, I will be speaking as a young Ukrainian person.
Mm-hmm.
About my thoughts, about my feelings. I'm not a war expert, but I'm still a Ukrainian, and I appreciate the opportunity to share our perspective. Speaking about the situation, well, what can I say? Currently, I am in Sumy. It is a city just right by the Russian-Ukrainian border, and today we had several air alerts already. I wasn't able to take my driving exam because there was an air alert, and there was like a Russian drone flying around that fell near the train station from which I'll depart back to Kiev tomorrow. So yeah, the situation is like that. We face drone and missile attacks every day, 100, 200 drones daily. Thankfully, we still have the anti-missile systems that the US also provided for us. that protect us. But yeah, life it's like a roller coaster right now, especially
Yeah.
with all the news. But we are standing strong. We are standing still. I think that in the recent weeks, we felt this need of unity once again, because who if not us will be responsible and is responsible for protecting the country and the people.
But you've noticed maybe in the last couple months an increase um, in missiles and drone attacks on the cities within Kyiv and where you are at home now? Or is it hard to say that there's been a change?
It's hard to say whether it's been a change, because since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, the attacks never stop.
Yeah,
But I
sure.
can confirm that lately, in the last several months, there have been much more air
Mm.
alerts than one would expect. There are cities where air alerts are like for 10, 12 hours a
Yeah.
day. So basically, state institutions, schools, they are like closed. A lot of children study online because of that. And well, it's an example was uh, the state service that provides opportunity to take driving exams and other services. It's also closed, so life kind of stops.
Uh,
But yeah, we are dealing with it.
And this is 3 years now. What you're describing, I don't think most Americans can picture, which is why it's great to have you there and describing it. I feel terribly for the situation. But you were saying 200 plus attacks a day, breaking it down, that's 8 to 10 an hour. You said 10 to 12 hours, so that's even more. It sounds like there are times when the sky is just filled with drones and missiles and you never know where they're going to hit. Is that accurate?
Well, that is quite true, but the war actually, yeah, started in 2014. So um, I think that so I was one time invited to a conference, yeah, just to share a perspective as a Ukrainian student. And during that conference, I realized that, so basically, my generation, we have been living in war for half or more than half of our lives. Of
Yeah.
course, in 2014, the situation was different, but we still had friends and family members, and
yeah.
um, who went fighting, who left their cities. So we experienced loss and this uncertainty and fear. And yeah, in 2022, it started like on a new scale. But I'm just admiring the Ukrainian people who
Mhm.
go through all this. Um, I'm admiring our civil activists and yeah, everyone. We are very strong, but unfortunately, a lot of people are dying.
Mhm.
So it's just sometimes painful to see and to experience a loss of a friend or something like that. So like my experience of that, I grew up in a small village, and I had, so most of my friends when I was a child, they were boys, because that's just happened to be like the street.
Sure.
So the three guys with whom I was very good friend, the first one died in the first year of war. The second one, he was he signed a contract and he was in Mariupol. He was Azovstal defender, so
Mm.
he was in captivity, and he spent there, I think, 9 months.
Mm.
He is now back, and he is now again in the military. And the third friend, he's also a military fighter. He also like signed a contract, so he went there because he wanted to
Mm.
protect Ukraine. And recently, well, several months ago, he was injured. So I'm, it's like crazy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's just one street in the village, and my three best friends basically experience war in such a way that they are fighting there by themselves. So yeah, sometimes this just strikes me.
Yeah,
For
just
sure.
terrible.
Can I ask you? Obviously, so much has changed regarding U.S. The United States government position. Uh, Fortunately, Brian, I just saw there hasn't really been a change in the position of the American people.
Right.
I just saw something on CNN that said 94% of Americans um, disagreed with the president and vice president uh, and understand that Russia started the war and is the aggressor. I found that number to be shocking,
That's kind of
but that
staggering.
was a
Yeah.
CNN poll that just went up today. But nevertheless, obviously, the United States support, military support, and even humanitarian support has all been stopped. Um, can you comment? I mean, you can't speak for the Ukrainian people, but we're asking you to speak for the Ukrainian people in a way. Maybe your sense, like, can you describe how people are thinking and feeling about that? Like, just what's the mood around that, around the people you're interacting with, and your sense of the people in general?
So, first of all, since the beginning, we were very thankful to the American people, to the United States for the support you provide. I was an exchange student in the United States in 2019, and I have some friends from there and yeah, host family that with whom I was staying while I was studying in high school, and they were supporting us from the beginning. So we are very grateful. Um, about the recent news, so I think it was just a bit shocking to us, and
To us too, by the way. Let's be clear.
um, and maybe unexpected because um, with the previous president of the United States, we kind of knew like what the positions are, what policies and decisions we might expect, and when President Trump won, he was saying that he wants to stop the war, he wants peace. We, as Ukrainians, want peace more than anybody else, but we want it on just and sustainable conditions. But we couldn't really expect what would be the further decisions. So, yeah, it was a bit shocking at first, and I didn't know how to react because never ever in my life I could have imagined that the some of representatives of the American government would spread narratives that Russia spreads.
Mm-hmm.
So in such a like just manner, just being so sure, so confident. So yeah, it was just this roller coaster. But I think that as a nation, we realized that we have so much work to do um, to engage in dialogues, to be more visible in the media, to work more as civil society, to support our army, to make these changes in Ukraine. Yeah, because we are responsible for that. Um, so that's all. What can I say? That's, I would say, another level of diplomacy, not something that was
Sure.
um, kind of normal. But yeah, the world is just not so normal anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
but yeah.
you mentioned civil society, and I've been thinking this as you've been talking. You just talked about taking a driver's test, and you talked about friends who go to the front. How do people who are not in the military live? How do they contribute to the military? What's a normal day like? So, are there things that people who haven't joined up are doing to actively support the military? And how much of that happens every day? What have you seen? What have you been involved in? And just kind of what's daily life like with
Yeah.
air raids all around you and so many people off at the front?
So Our civil society movement is quite powerful. There are a lot of Ukrainians abroad who um, support Ukraine and who do some volunteering there. And there are people in Ukraine, and it takes different forms, different shapes. Um, Currently, a lot of young people, what they do is they organize this kind of like charity fundraisers on their social media for some medical supplies for the military,
Mhm.
or for drones, to buy like drones, or to buy some other systems or cars for the military, because obviously we have to also help as
Yeah.
much as we can to get this technology and cars and everything. Like the other day, I just closed a small charity fundraiser that we opened for my cousin who is at the front line. So there was one um, woman that organized a big charity fundraiser, and a lot of people joined her with their like smaller goals. That
Mm.
so we would just share our bank account details, and people who don't even know me, they donate their money so that we can pass it further. So I would say that this is an example of like immense trust,
Mm.
because then with this money you buy like this certain a drone or a car, you post the check, you post the picture, and people, yeah, people just trust you and know that you're doing your best. The other thing that a lot of people do is writing in the international media, also doing podcasts. Just when the full scale invasion started, I was also involved in podcast. It was called
Mm.
Ukrainians Identity in Dignity, where with my friends we were trying to explain for English speaking audience who are Ukrainians,
Mm.
uh, what is going on with the war, why Russia is an aggressor, why Ukrainian culture is unique. So we did several episodes there, and that was just also a way to, yeah, just to help Ukrainians at times. A lot of people volunteer in hospitals. Um, and or they do the waving of a like a special military, how do I say it in English? That's like a special military. Yeah, maybe it's like a nest with which you can cover cars. It's
Yeah.
Like
yeah,
camouflage.
Camouflage. Yeah.
yeah, camouflage. So they do that. For example, in a small city from where I'm from. So there are a group of women who do this almost like on a daily basis. They do
Mm.
this camouflage for our military forces. When the full scale invasion just began, there were a lot of humanitarian aid coming. So young people organized to kind of sort it and find people who are in the most need and deliver those aid. Just bring this aid to the internally displaced. Um, Volunteering is done in a way that yeah, just youth and adults, they work and support psychologically military internally displaced people. So there are so many examples that are
Yeah.
popping to my head, and everyone just tries to find it's what one can do best uh, to support Ukraine.
Great. If I can do one more in daily life, and then I'll pass it back to Joel. What is it like? So you're not in the conflict, but you're still in a war zone. Are there stores that are open? Where do you
Mm.
get food? Are there problems with everyday life? How does that work? Just give us a picture, because I don't think most people understand it.
Um, we try to live our normal life, and that is also something amazing, because in the morning you're awakened by explosions, and
Yeah.
you run to the shelter, and you're scared, you don't know what to expect. But then when the air alert passes, you just gather your backpack, you go to school, you go to work, you grab coffee, and yeah, the stores are open, everything is working. So there was a case when I think it was a cafe that was destroyed by a Russian drone or a missile, but in the morning it was still open and serving people the
Oh,
coffee,
wow.
and people just came to buy coffee and support that store. Um, so after the meeting of President Zelensky and Trump in the Oval Office, I think there was a phrase that um, the Vice President of the United States said that he has actually seen the stories of what is going in Ukraine, and that was something that is um, that kind of like amazed me because yeah, of course, people from Ukraine, they share stories and post pictures of the war destructions that happen, but they also share stories of their daily life
Yeah.
to show that no matter what, we resist, we continue living because that's the only chance. How can we, I don't know, keep our mental space strong? How can we just live in this harsh reality and in a way, when the economic activity in the country is done, when you can go to the stores and support national products, you pay taxes, so you support the country. So that's also an essential part of surviving through the war.
Absolutely.
If I may, I want to clarify. Khrystyna regularly refers to the full-scale invasion. She's referring to Russia's all-out attempt to seize Ukraine that began on February 22nd of 2022. In 2014, Russia seized Crimea and occupied part of Donetsk. And for the entirety of Putin's reign in Russia before that, has been interfering with Ukrainian politics and at one point installed what he was hoping would be a puppet regime that resulted in Ukrainian people toppling it. So the reference to the full-scale invasion is for Ukrainians this phase of the war, which began in February of 2022. Um, uh, but like Khrystyna says, Ukraine's been at war from Ukraine's perspective at least since 2014, and really in some ways since Putin came to power and expressed his objective of doing what he's been doing now. Um, Khrystyna, I wanted to ask you, um, it's over 3 years, and I think the whole world was inspired by, moved by, struck by the resolve of the Ukrainian people, and for most of us, myself included, and certainly for the Kremlin, shocked at Ukraine's ability to repel that invasion and retake so much of the territory. And there was a great sense of unity that I think inspired the world to come to Ukraine's aid, most of the world anyway. Can you talk a little bit about the internal sort of political situation among the people? Like, there's got to be fatigue. Does that fatigue translate to a split politically within Ukraine to try to not to maybe bring an end to this um, short of what the initial objectives were?
Um, so, of course, as any country, there are some internal issues that we are facing, and of course, a lot of people are um, kind of like uh, they are not as happy and not as it's just hard to stay positive all the time, but we are
Yeah.
trying. Uh, but we are dealing with our internal issues as best as we can. However, when it comes to security matters or diplomacy or representing Ukraine abroad, or when we are thinking about how important it is for us to show this one voice, um, we are quite united. We are quite supportive of each other. Um, we understand that we want peace, but on a certain matters important for us. So I would say that when it comes to this part, we are very united.
Hmm.
Uh, and some internal issues, yeah, they are present, but I don't think that I would be the greatest expert to speak about them.
I don't know. I mean, maybe you are, though. In your first remarks, you described your three closest friends growing up, one of whom you've lost, another of whom has been wounded, and both of them are in harm's way very much right now, fighting. Um, and so, um, I don't know. Like, it obviously your support for Ukraine's continued uh, fight clearly hasn't changed. Um, but I think just from where I sit so far away, I could understand an attitude maybe of, I don't know, Brian, how would you say, like, enough is enough? Or
Yeah.
yeah.
No, just
And
weariness, yeah, and worn
yeah,
down. You the words you used, yeah.
no, I'm not hearing that from you. But I would think if there were a large portion of the Ukrainian public that would be known, that would be sort of a public conversation. Should we cede territory and just stop fighting or not? Like, it doesn't is that's not really a big split among the people.
So when answering that question, one speech recalls in my mind. That was a speech by Alexandra Matvichuk,
Hmm.
delivered on behalf of Center for Civil Liberties when they received the Nobel Prize.
Hmm.
And there she spoke about peace and what kind of like peace Ukrainians want and why seizing and just giving up on the territories is not an option. So peace is so Ukraine is big and a part of Ukraine is still occupied and we have our people there. And I think that as Ukrainians, we understand that we have to um, bring these people back to ensure that they have their like essential human rights to be a part of our country. And because when they stay under Russian occupation, what Russia does is murders, kills, tortures, um, takes Ukrainian children and just brings them to Russia, steals their identity. So peace is not occupation in that case. Peace is, yes, it's unfortunately like it is connected to the word fight for our freedom. So I would say that we agree on the idea that peace in ensuring those human rights, liberties, and freedom to Ukrainians who are staying currently under temporarily occupied territories. Um, there are the Ukrainian soldiers who are fighting at the front line. They are the greatest heroes, and of course, they are doing the most important job. So that's why we are so active in promoting this, yeah, ideas that, as Alexander Matvichuk said, that um, to support Ukraine, you don't need to be a Ukrainian; you just need to be human.
Hmm.
So we are trying to get the support as much as possible. So we also um, help these people because, of course, they have been fighting for 3 or 10 or 11 years for now,
Right?
and I think they want also they want this peace. They want security
Yeah.
for
And
their families.
also when we think about this internationally, there's always the fear. I don't know how much you can speak to this or how much you feel it. There's the fear that if there's a peace agreement now with Russia and the territories that they've occupied, that Russia will just take a break and rearm themselves and come back even stronger because Putin's made it clear that he wants to take all of Ukraine, that that's his ultimate goal. Is that something that people think about or that people fear, or is it more just the everyday?
That's 100% true what people think and what we fear, because we have experience of negotiating with Russia
Mhm.
in the past, centuries ago, and
Mhm.
in 2014 and in the following years. Or, even the example of this green corridors, when we try to evacuate our people from Mariupol and other cities. Just Russia never follows the agreements, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
If you show that um, if you show yourself in kind of like weaker position, and Russia seizes, it will try to attack again, and that's something that we want to avoid, because it can it I don't want the war to start again in months, or in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years. I don't want my children to face it. When I was little, our grandmas used to tell us, well, the most important in life is that you never experience war. Everything will be
Mhm.
fine as long as you never experience war. And I never thought that I would be uh, a person saying that to my children and my grandchildren in the future. I don't want them to experience that. I want this. We want this to end now, and we are trying to do everything we can. So that happens.
Yeah, to me, um, it's the most disheartening aspect of the change in. I usually don't refer to what we have here as a government. I refer to it as the regime, because there has been regime change in the United States. Because we made obligations. We signed a treaty with Ukraine guaranteeing Ukraine security. Um, uh, and Ukraine took a major leap of faith in signing the Budapest Memorandum in 1994. Uh, Not so much in trusting the United States, because even then that seemed a foregone conclusion, but it meant trusting Russia to honor its agreement, to guarantee Ukraine's sovereignty and security in exchange for Ukraine giving up its nuclear arsenal. Uh, and it's one thing for Russia under Putin to violate its agreements over and over again, but the disheartening thing is when the United States of America has. Um, do you, maybe this is just, how do you think about this personally? Um, have you sort of experienced internally a shift towards um, maybe orientation towards or hope for Europe to sort of replace the United States as a guarantor? Like, how real is that sort of, I don't know, psychological shift?
Once again, I'm not an expert, but I'll try to answer.
Yeah, I'm just asking you personally.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think that the States is a friend of Ukraine, and it will be a friend of Ukraine because a lot of American people support Ukraine.
That's
Um,
true.
a lot of my friends who are who are Republicans, they still support Ukraine, and they kind of change their mind a lot after the recent news. So I'm sure that we have to still build strong partnership with the United States, because what is common between us, um, it's values. It's the value of freedom that, yeah, should be something common. We are kind of like far apart, but I would very much like that we would be united on this topic of values. But yes, I think that in Ukraine we also think that it's important to build partnerships with our European, not just European allies and countries. Um, there have been um, a lot of activity recently, and I hope that European Union will finally make this um, decisions that would help to develop it more in terms of military, because in previous years there were a lot of commitments and talks,
Mhm.
but not a lot of actions. But I think that this is something that we are expecting, and what our partners are signing. I also think that for Ukraine, it's important to build partnerships with other countries from the world. For example, I work in the department for cooperation with Asia, Africa, and Latin America at Ukrainian Institute, and kind of like my responsibility is working with 3 African countries: Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa. So it's important that Ukraine strengthens its voice there and battles Russian propaganda.
Mhm.
Um, just to Because I feel like there is this division. Once again, referring to Alexander Matviichuk's speech, between authoritarianism and democracy. And um, it's good to have more people on the side of democracy, to have more friends there. So, yeah, I think we'll be looking more globally now, because that's no secret that United States provided significant portion of military and humanitarian support to Ukraine. And I don't want to think it in terms that it stops. I would hope that it is paused, because I cannot imagine um, how it will be without, for example, the Patriot systems that
Mhm.
Right.
protect our sky.
Yeah, you mentioned all the missile attacks and air alerts and things, and that's a big piece of what helps defend the country. That's important. So you mentioned early on, I want to go back for a second, that you're in Soma, which is in the east. It's right along, I think it's northeast, right along the Russian border. Do you and people feel safe enough there compared to other places? So if you went to Kiev, would you be safer? If you went to the western parts of the country, are people staying because it's their home? Is it more danger because you're there, basically?
Um, so I'm in Suma. I'm just here for the weekend. Normally, I live in
Okay,
Kyiv. I come to Suma sometimes because I have a boyfriend and his family here, whom I often visit. But yes, it's a bit more dangerous here, because even if you think geographically, all the drones that are flying, they have to pass
Mhm.
the cities in certain order. But I just love the city, and I'm amazed by the people, because they value their home so much, and they are saying that they have to stay here, because if not them, then who will stay? Then who will support the city? They are identifying themselves with the city so much, and it means so much for them to be here at home. Um, that is amazing. Of course, a lot of people moved to Western Oblast regions of Ukraine, or they left abroad because it is not quite safe.
right.
Mhm.
It's in any city in Ukraine, it is safe. But the people who stay there, they are brave. So
Brian, you got another?
I don't know that I have another. I think you've covered things incredibly well. Thank you. So we have a closing question that we ask everyone,
Good God.
and I'm
You're going to
interested.
ask Khrystyna a closing question?
Well, I'm going to modify it a little
Thank you.
bit. So let me give you a second to think about it, and I'll explain it. I'm going to give the
Mm,
question first. Our question for guests is normally, if you had a magic wand or one wish, and you could do one thing to change what's happening right now, what would it be? And I'm going to ask you in this case to put that in more realistic terms, short of saying that the Russians should leave right now, which is the easy answer. The Russians should pull out. What would you want most to happen right now? What would help the people of Ukraine the most right now?
mm, so I know there are a lot of we know that there are a lot of conflicts around the world, that Ukraine is not alone here, and we are trying in Ukraine also to support people who are fighting for their freedom in other parts of the world. So yeah, the thing that I would wish for is for all these conflicts to stop and for the world to finally um, respect human rights and liberty, just more globally, because um, here we are one example, but there are so many others, and it's important that all of them stop.
And I really appreciate that perspective. Thank you,
Beautiful
because
answer.
it's something that we forget. This isn't just a war. This isn't just people dying. This is about human rights and liberty and freedom and Ukrainian people and others. That's a great answer. Thank you.
Yeah, it's not just territory. It's not some abstract concept of sovereignty, right? Ukrainians are fighting because Russia stands for opposing all of those values that you just so nicely expressed. Um, Khrystyna, thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Stay safe. Uh, you're one of the many people who are in harm's way, who I care very much about. Thank you so much for joining us. Stay safe, and let us hope that things take a
We, we,
turn
we,
in a
we
better
we
place.
wish the very best to you and
Very
to all the
best.
Ukrainian people.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you to you and to all the American people that support Ukrainians. It was a pleasure to
Slava
speak with you.
Ukraini.
Heroям
Thank you.
slava!
And please, by the way, we'll post them at the end of this video. If you have some charities that need donations, please let us know that, and we'll make sure that we put them around as much as possible.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to our podcast. Please like it and share it. Tune in next time. And until next time, thank you.
Thank you all.